Hey guys, it's 100% Dad and Townsend Russell. What you're about to listen here is a podcast from Dad Hard Pod with Mo Green. This section is cut out is where he and I talked for a little bit. I hope you enjoy.
It's the guest segment, and I got a very special guest coming on the show today. He is actually another dad that also has a podcast. It's like kindred spirits over here or whatever. So I'm introducing Townsend Russell. He is the host of the podcast, 100% Dad. And I wanted to kind of sit down with him to see what his thoughts were about, doing a podcast, why he decided to start it. I know why I did it, but, I'm always interested to find out why different dads do the things that they do. And in this case, we're kind of doing the same thing. We have a little bit of different angles, but I wanted to reach out to him, wanted to bring him on the show and have him discuss his needs and his thoughts, why he thought a podcast for dads was needed. So Townsend, you there?
I'm here.
Excellent. Nice to have you on the show. Thank you for giving me the time. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I wanted to, we've been talking back and forth via email and a couple text conversations or whatever. And I wanted to bring you on the show because I always think it's interesting that I see new dads, or you're not a new dad, but dads coming on with podcasts and offering different types of content. So I'm always curious as to why they decided to do that. For me, I wanted to offer an experience. I'm a new dad, and I didn't feel like I had a lot of outlets for that while I was preparing to be a father. So I wanted to kind of offer that experiential guideline while also giving myself a kind of audio journal down this path of fatherhood. But why did you specifically decide to start your podcast?
So the podcast is actually a vessel of our content. So I never went out to start a podcast. I went out to start putting out content. And so we started with, a Facebook page and a website and an Instagram page and started doing some videos on YouTube and things like that. And then it just kind of, and it's still all new. This has been the last few months. And then we started doing some podcasts because audio is such a popular thing.
Oh, absolutely.
From my perspective, so you're doing the going, I guess, from birth and tracking the stages of like a really young baby and first time dad and things like that. I am definitely in a different season of life. I've got 3 boys, an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
Oh man!
So we're beyond the infant stages.
They must be running you dry.
Yeah. Well, and we're really getting to like a super fun stage to where all the kids can be involved, and we can go out and do, boy and man stuff, and we're starting to get into hunting together and things like that.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
We can go to arcades and have a lot of fun. Whereas before we've always kind of been, tied down to, not a nice word, but it's true. We've always kind of been anchored by an infant. You can only do so much when you have the infants with you.
I know it very well.
Yeah, so we're getting to that stage to where we have no new babies coming, and that's where we've really been for 8 years. It's been constant diapers and constant sleep schedules and feeding schedules and working around that. Now we're starting to really enjoy the fun that comes with not having babies.
Yeah,
which is good.
Yeah, I can imagine as such. So you said you started kind of releasing content before the podcast. What sparked you then, I guess, to start going down that road? Did you?
So that's a more interesting story. I like to write,
okay,
which is weird because I'm not a writer, but that's kind of like how I don't know, my stress relief. I just enjoy doing that. And so I at one point in my business got a little worried that I was going to be dead at some point. So I wanted to make sure our businesses would survive me. So I wrote out like a whole detailed, like 3-inch thick binder of step-by-step what to do if I die, what to tell the employees, the customers, how to run the business, what vendors to call, what to say. And so I have like this whole binder of, if I die, my wife can step in and basically be me, and she can either run the business, hire a manager, or sell the business. But it doesn't collapse without me.
Right.
And so it was really smart to do, and that's something I think everybody, where the business relies on one person like it did on me, I think everyone should do it like that. in place in case you become disabled or in a car accident or just somehow not available. And so I just felt it was such a good idea. I figured I could do it with parenting. If I could replace business Townsend, then maybe I can replace business or parenting dad, or Townsend the dad. So I just started writing down notes that if I die, that I would want my boys to know, like, just things how I would intend to raise them, how what our family stands for and what our values are, and
right.
How we've reacted in different situations. Things that a dad teaches his kids over time, or I feel they should teach their kids over time, and so that's really. So I ended up writing like a whole book on that as well. So when I say book, it's not like a book to be published because, well, parenting books are boring, and that one is no exception.
You're absolutely correct about that. You're absolutely correct.
So I figured, the best way to kind of get it out there was just to put it out for free and give content. So we just give like little pieces here and there, and we're just slowly kind of releasing it all.
Cool.
And so that's really how it kind of started. Was I wrote essentially a book or notes on what I would want my boys to know if I die, and can't tell them myself. And then that was kind of it.
So now, are you doing the content? Is it just you, or you keep referring to the we? Do you have like a team or a group of dads or a group of guys or people that you're working with to put it out? Or are you doing it with your wife?
So I still have 3 other businesses, so I do spend a lot of time on those. Plus, I have 3 boys, and so my time is definitely spent with my family,
for sure,
with those businesses, and with 100% Dad. So I'm a little fragmented. I am terrible at art. Like, I'm not an artist at all. So I do have someone that makes that. So I tell them basically what I want, and then they make graphics around it. So I can't do graphics. Irene is great at graphics, so she does the graphics. We have a girl, Lindsay, and she's really our website and social media person. We just hired her on about a month or 2 ago.
Oh, cool.
And she decides like when we should release and what we should release, and she's doing, so like if you go to our Instagram page now, you'll notice if you go back and look at our postings, it looks a lot better aesthetically now than it did a month ago, where it was all kind of like the same aesthetics to it.
Gotcha.
And so she's very talented in those aspects, but so the content is still 100% me. Every word is still me. But they kind of create the graphics around it and the aesthetics and the timing of how to put it out and things like that. Some of the comments and like if you communicate via message, that's sometimes me, it's sometimes Lindsay. If it's complicated at all, or Lindsay just doesn't know how to answer it, she'll send me a message, and we stay in daily communication on that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Cool. It's a great concept the reason why I started my podcast, going along with what you said about the books being boring, right, is that there's just not a lot of like cool or like entertaining content that's out there for dads specifically. There's a million Instagram pages and Twitters and Facebook groups and all that stuff for moms, but like there's this real void when it comes to the same thing for dads, and I think that's really necessary. I really love what you're doing as far as like generating that content for dads. And just speaking of that content, what's like the overall message that you're trying to get across to your followers or the audience with your content? Because I feel like from listening to the podcast and stuff like that, it's a different message than what I'm coming with, but an very important message nonetheless, and I really dig it. So why don't you talk about that for a little bit?
You hit the nail on the head. There's not a lot of content out there, and there's either 2 reasons for that. Is just because either we're not putting it out, or we've been kind of encouraged not to put it out, or because we're all making a giant mistake, and there's no dads that want to listen to it, and then all this is going to fail anyway. So one of those 2 things.
Well, we might be making giant mistakes anyway, even if we are putting content out. But at least we're letting people know that we're making those mistakes.
That's true. The interesting thing about it is when you think of a mom, you think of a very capable person. You think of someone that's doing, at least when I think about it, the laundry and the cooking and cleaning and helping the kids with school and taking care of the house. And, oftentimes they're out working as well, but they're kind of like the jack of all trades. They do everything. Like, the world's on their shoulders, and they're competent, they're smart, they run the family finance. Like, that's what when you talk about a mom, that's kind of like the picture people start to formulate. And when you talk about a dad, a lot of people just go straight to, he watches football all day. All he cares about is sports. He just makes stupid jokes.
The Homer Simpson esque.
He's the head of the family, but Lord knows why.
Right.
And that whole general perspective just kind of drives me crazy. And it's been so pushed and ingrained, and it's in popular culture, like you said, Homer Simpson, and I mean, just most TV shows make dad the butt of the joke. Whereas you go back to like the 50s, dad was the leader and the anchor of the family, and like a true patriarch.
Yeah. And
now he's the punchline.
Yeah.
So I would really like to see that narrative change. I would like the dads that have gotten soft and are trying to think of the best way to verbalize that, but essentially, I want the soft dads to step up and be a little harder, and I want the hard dads to step back and be a little softer, because you still have the good old country boy that thinks he should just dominate everything, and he should sit down and have a beer, and his wife should take care of him, and he should discipline the children, and his involvement with the kids should only be when they're older, and kind of in a sense then more enjoyable, or when it comes to discipline. And I also disagree with that. Like, I think a dad needs to be giving lots of love and bonding when they're young, so that way when we get to these older stages, they can come to dad with their real problems, and they're not hiding it from him.
Right, really build that trust. It's building that trust between father and son, or father and daughter. But exactly. You do that by, I'm seeing that with I know you're way ahead of me as far as like the parenting road and steps with how old your boys are. But I already see that with my daughter, is that, she's only 2 months old, right? But I see that, like, from the love and affection that I give her, she finds comfort in me anytime, like, I step into the room. So, like, if my wife is changing her on the changing table and she's crying or whatever, and I come into the room, her eyes and her mood changes a little bit, and she gets softer now, because there's, like, this sense of, like, trust almost that I think she understands, whether she actually does or not, or it might all be in my head, right? But
it's all bonding.
For sure. And I think that's important. That's why I really wanted to talk to you, because I think that message is so important to get across.
Right, because you look at the amount of problems you're having with youth these days, and especially when they get to that teenage level, and the amount of drugs, the amount of suicides, the amount of sex. You look at all the negative factors, and a common denominator is that there's not a strong dad at home, or mom and dad are divorced, or dad's not even around at all.
Yeah.
And when there is a very solid two-parent household where mom and dad are in a good relationship, the youth issues drop by 90%. It's not a cure-all, fix-all.
No, of course not.
Statistically, it is dramatically different.
Oh, absolutely.
And to think, like you're saying, creating that bonding early, to think that you can not ever change a diaper, and not be involved, and just start getting involved and telling the kid what to do when they're 11, 12 years old, and then trying to insert yourself, and you think that kid's going to listen to you, like, it's not going to happen.
Of course.
So that's why, being there when they're an infant and being involved, and as a dad, you're going to be into it more because you have this podcast and you're really paying attention to it. Most dads don't have that, and I was included in. It's not always fun to play with an infant, to play with a 1-year-old, 2-year-old. They're kind of boring. They do the same thing. And it's really easy just to sit there and turn on the TV, turn on football games, and have the kid near you and let them play with their blocks or whatnot, and or not be there at all, because it feels like you're not missing out on anything. But I think it's critically important to be there and to create that bonding and to have those softer moments of where the kid can cuddle up with you and you can do the same back. And I just think that plays dividends down the road.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I mean, like I said, I'm seeing it even now with my 8-week-old. And, my wife always, it's funny that you bring up the, just sit down and watch TV because they get boring. My wife keeps me in check a little bit, like I have a podcast, but I'm not like a perfect dad. Like sometimes it does. It gets a little bit redundant in that they're just kind of lying around and just looking around and doing stuff. So, there are times where like I want to be like, okay, she doesn't necessarily want to be like sitting on me anymore, or she's just lying here. You know what? Let me put her in her swing. And my wife keeps me in check. She's like, oh, you're just going to pawn her off on the swing? You're just going to put her down like that? You don't want to hang out at the bottom of that? I'm like, whoa, I was like, you're right. Like, let me just keep her. Let me turn her around. Let me do some stuff. Let me take her into her room. Let me, play with her on her like tummy time mat or whatever like that. Because I agree with you. I think it's really, really, really important. And this whole concept of dads being more involved in general, is extremely important. My dad was very involved in my life, and I can see how that's changed me in comparison to a lot of my friends that I had growing up that didn't have fathers in their life at all, and my dad actually was able to step into that role for them a lot of times. And I saw the dividends that paid for me, but also for like my friends that didn't have that role, and they looked to my dad to do that. And I kind of want to emulate that because I think it's very, very, very important. And I agree with you on that front. There's just a different experience and a different way that you evolve and you mature and you grow when you do have that fatherly experience, whether you're a son or a daughter, when you have that fatherly connection from jump. I think it just makes a world of difference,
And something to think about, as adults, our minds will think that quality time is more important than quantity of time. And as adults, that's normal. Your relationship with your wife, that's normal. You want the time to be quality, not necessarily quantity.
For sure.
I think with children, it's the opposite. You want quantity.
Yep.
Like having them every other weekend and doing lots of fun stuff is less good than being there day in and day out all the time and just eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner with them and having normal conversations than every other weekend, going to the theme park or whatever it is.
Right.
Quantity over quality when they're younger. And then that needs to shift, I think, later to be more quality time, of course.
Sure.
But I think a lot of dads, because either the position they're in, and it's not the popular thing to say, but they feel that the quality is more important than quantity. And I think at a young stage, that's a big mistake.
Yeah, well, because at a young stage, they're not remembering the moments yet, right? You know what I mean? Until you get to be 2, 3, 2 is even young, but until you get to be 3, 4, 5, 6, you're not really remembering these like quality moments, for lack of a better term. But you do remember that your dad or your parent was always there. So I agree with you.
Right.
I very much agree with you on that.
It's that presence. It's that stability. It's that he's always there. That's the important factor. Less than memories. Because some of those things are going to be super memorable. But when you're talking about grooming a human being, a stable environment is very important. Like it makes a difference throughout the scope of their lives.
100%.
And you being there all the time creates that stable environment.
I agree 100%. I mean, I hate to keep relaying it back to me, but I see that, I sleep next to, we still have my daughter in the bassinet in our bedroom, right? And I sleep next to it because my wife is like, if I sleep next to it, I'm going to be going crazy and think all the time, is she breathing? Is she not breathing? If I don't hear her, every sound she's going to, so I sleep next to the bassinet. But now needless to say, I am now doing that all the time. Like, I don't sleep at night because every time I hear her, I'm like, was something wrong? If I don't hear her, I'm like, is something wrong? But I can see that she now, my daughter expects me to be there next to her every time that I lie her down or put her. So when I put her down for a nap and I try to leave the room, she's looking wait, you're not staying here? You're not going to be right here with me or whatever? Or when I wake her up in the morning to feed, she's so happy to know that I'm there waking her up. She expects to see me. Absolutely.
Now you also need to wean her off that eventually.
Oh, well, of course.
A 4, 5, 6-year-old not able to sleep in their own room. You're also in your first, so we did that same thing with our first child. And when you start getting second, third, that outside of the first few weeks, that becomes less relevant, and because you want to sleep so bad.
Yeah.
You're willing to put a 3-week-old baby in their own room on the other side of the house.
Yeah.
Because, my gosh, you haven't slept in 4 years. And just anything you could do. I mean, really, that's what it kind of comes down to. But and I've got friends that, it's a little strange, but their entire family sleeps in the same room. I could never do that.
That's
it works
insane.
for their family, and their kids are still independent. So they're a unique family, and that's why I won't bash on anybody's parenting style, because they're really good parents. Their kids are going to grow up to be fine and independent, but they have basically 2 like king size beds in their room, in their master bedroom. All the kids sleep in one, and parents sleep in the other, and that's just the way they like to do it. And they're also a farming family, so they get up at like 3 a.m. and start their day.
Okay.
So it's and they go to bed at like 6 o'clock, like when it's still sunny outside. So they're different.
You might have to give me these guys' contacts. I might have to talk to this dad, because that's a very interesting way of life.
So now that would not be a normal scenario where I would say that's good for anybody, because like the kids need the but they're good enough parents to where they introduce independence and
for sure.
And being on your own and things like that. Outside of that, it's just one of the quirky things that they do as a family, and they like it. So, but the kids have their own bedrooms; they just, for whatever reason, don't utilize it. So we picked on them for a little bit when we first found that out. But it works for them, but the long-term play is there. They're not sitting there saying, "We just can't let go, and we're going to cuddle on these kids until they're 18 years old, and then those kids will never leave for school, and then it'd be just a weird dynamic."
Right.
So I will never bash anybody's parenting, as long as they're thinking forward and making sure that what they're doing today, and that they have a plan, but they're considering how that kid's going to grow up and be a teenager and be a fully functioning adult.
For sure.
I think is a critical thought process.
I agree 100%. That's so interesting. Everybody, it's so crazy. My wife just started this mommy group, and she tells me all these stories about everybody shares while she's in there. It's so interesting how different everybody's like parenting style is, and it's all about kind of parenting for what works for your family. And that was like the concept that they learned in the class this week. But it's just so interesting to hear all these different ways that people are bringing up their children. You think like, going back to your example of like the 50s, right? Everything was kind of cookie cutter. It was all the same. Every single child was raised the same. Every family kind of operated in the same way. It's very interesting to see how different, people that are living in the same neighborhood or like next door to each other, they raise their kids completely different styles of doing anything. It's so interesting to see that now. This story that you just mentioned kind of brought that up in my head. I know it was a little bit of a tangent, but it's just so interesting that everybody has their own style, and that's the cool thing about parenting, though, right?
And if you do this podcast long enough, you'll learn you're going to get a ton of hate of people who just disagree with what you say. And same thing if your wife's probably experienced in the mom blogs. I mean, mom blogs, there's a ton of hate within them.
It's so crazy, it really is.
Because if you do something different and you say it and you think it's good for your family, and even if you say it in a way that, hey, everyone can do their own thing, you be as delicate as you can about it, you're going to offend a solid amount of people. So I'm starting to get to that stage where I'm just like, whatever, this is how I feel. Bring the hate. I can take it.
Yeah, for sure.
I just don't care enough. And there's enough people out there that like what I'm saying that I don't know, I guess I'm okay with it. But truth be told, even if nobody liked what I was saying, I'd still say it. Because it's how I genuinely feel and how I want my kids to be raised. And so, and them to hopefully raise their kids in that same or similar format. So
for sure, and that's why you're delivering all this content, because as content creators, we can't really think about what everybody else is saying. We're doing what's honest to us and what's true to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's really important. The other thing I wanted to touch on with you, because that I thought is really, really interesting from like looking at your content and listening to your podcast, is that you mentioned before you run 3 businesses. And I assume 100% Dads is the 4th, or is that 3rd?
Yeah, technically, yeah. It's hard to call it a business. It's more of a hobby right now. But it's sucking cash, and it's never going to generate cash.
So it's like years. A 4th kid then, I guess.
It is, in a sense. And it takes so much effort to birth them and to raise them when they're little, and it's less fun, but then it becomes really enjoyable.
For sure.
And then there's always this kind of roller coaster ride of, oh, we're going to die, and oh my gosh, this is great. And it happens about 100 times a minute.
Yeah.
So I genuinely enjoy it. And I know having a business is not for everybody.
No.
A lot of people out there, I see this is getting off parenting completely, but like there's a lot of content being put out there, like start a business, like work for yourself. And I think it's bad advice a lot of times. There's a lot of people that just cannot work for themselves.
100%.
They can't handle the stress of it, the up and down nature of it. They're not great decision makers. They're not self-motivated. And it takes a pretty competent person to be able to run so many different aspects every single day.
Of course.
You talk about wearing the different hats. It's very literal, and it's so many. You have to be the salesperson, the accountant, and the janitor, and just everything. And you have to do it every single day. So your mind has to be able to handle that fragmentation and the constant jumping off. And it's not, it really just is not for everybody.
But you now, not only do you own 3 businesses, you've said that every time you have a child, you decided that you were going to start another business. If memory serves me correct from listening, why did you feel that way? Like, why, that sounds...
Well, in the moment, I didn't realize it. It wasn't until I looked back and I realized it happened.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't like, I'm having a kid, let's start a business. It was clearly something inside. One of 2 things happened. Either I was starting to get bored because the business was starting to run more on its own after about 2-3 years, and then I just wanted that challenge of doing something else, or inside I was freaking out a little bit, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're having another kid, and we're a single income family, so my wife stays at home and I work, and I am the sole source of everything. So,
right.
So it's possible inside I was just panicking and just, all right, let's get another revenue stream going. I don't know which one's which. It's probably a combination of both. Yeah. But yeah, it was around the 3rd kid when I realized I was doing it, and I'm like, my gosh, after Levi it was RCS, and then with Ryder it was the Auburn Group, and with Aiden it was Florida Best Vending. So it's looking back, it's very obvious what I was doing. It was less obvious when I was doing it.
Yeah, I guess getting a different revenue, a new revenue stream when you have a new child, I guess you need that almost. You know what I mean? Like, because they're gonna start.
Kids are not as expensive. They're not as expensive as people think. So we homeschool now. We just started that about 1.5 years ago.
Okay.
And the homeschooling community is, it's really good, especially here in Florida. There's big homeschooling communities.
Okay.
But they're really interesting people, because there's like families of 6 and 7 kids, living on single income, $40,000 incomes,
right.
And you're like, man, if they can have that many kids on $40,000 and live very happily, then man, I know people making $120,000 with 2 kids that are like upside down and everything, and just panicking and thinking they need to make more money, and it's really interesting.
That's interesting. So, but I didn't even expect to get into this conversation. But talk to me a little bit more about this homeschooling thing. I didn't realize that you did that. How is that experience? Why did you make that decision to do that with your kids? Did you do that from jump, like starting with your 8-year-old, or has that changed for him? Or
we just started, I think, about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So while they're relatively long, but we had him in a private school.
Okay.
And we had the other, Ryder was like a 3-year-old school. And that was like 2 or 3 days a week for like half the day. And Levi was in for 5 days a week, I think, in 1st grade. And it's something, I knew some homeschoolers growing up. And I was always kind of envious of that because they got their school done so much faster than everybody else. Like school, and I cut probably 90% of school in high school. Like
so
junior, senior year, I was like a rare occurrence in the classroom. But yeah, it's good. They would finish all their schooling in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then they'd go out surf because we live in beach town. They'd go out surfing for the rest of the day. Then they'd show up to football practice and wrestling practice, and like, my God, like there's something to that, and they're intelligent. Like, they're usually doing college courses, getting college credits when they're 17 years old. Like, and so they're like graduating high school with, a year and a half of college under their belt. So that was something I was not against at all. But Ryan was. She didn't want to do it. Okay. My wife. And then she kind of came to me and just said she's willing to give it a try, and we take it year by year.
Okay.
Because that is a lot of time for mom to be with three boys. I mean, all day, every day, no breaks.
And she does the school, like she is like the educator?
Yeah, so my wife's, and my wife wasn't competent. I don't think I would do it. She's highly intelligent. She's a lot smarter than me. She was like a straight A student in high school. And she's a little OCD in like her research and things like that. So she researched all these different curriculums, and she joined a co-op group. In fact, they just created their own co-op group this year. But she really dug into each of the curriculums and decided which one's best for our family. So she actually teaches the core classes like the math and
cool.
So certain subjects, and then like the things we're not good at as a family, music, art, history, we do with a co-op once a week. So like today they're out there, and so it's a whole bunch of families that get together, and different moms teach different classes, and they teach in a group setting. There's a lot of social interaction there.
Interesting.
Which was my big concern with homeschooling was actually social interaction. I was worried they'd be like isolated and be these like weird socially deficient children. And it's been 100% the opposite. Like they spend so much time with other kids. It's ridiculous. Just because our homeschool community here is so large. I mean, every day they're out at a playground or someone's house or at a party or at the splash park or at the beach with like 30 other kids.
Wow.
And they're just like they're almost overly social now.
Wow.
And that was one of my biggest concerns. But
I can imagine.
So we still take it year by year. I mean, if Ryan ever comes to me and says, "Listen, I don't want to do this anymore," she has a lesson plan because she actually does the teaching. So it's not like a virtual school where you just put the kid on the computer or anything like that. Like it's like she's actually doing the teaching.
So do you have like a classroom like in your house with like a chalkboard and like all that stuff?
We do. We had in our back patio was like a covered patio with the roof, had like some screen-in porch. So we didn't close that and put like real walls and windows and everything in and AC that. And so that's kind of become like our homeschool room, if you want to call it that. So we did create a dedicated space for it. Before that, it was just in our living room or kitchen table, wherever they wanted to.
That's so interesting, man. I mean, you should be doing this podcast and creating all this content because the different experiences that you have and you, it's like made to deliver this content to people. There's just so much that you have going on. It's so very interesting, and I thought that from.
You know what my problem is? Like I'm so not used to recording my life or talking about it that much. Like
it's weird.
I've always kind of been the quieter person. And now I'm realizing, like, Lindsay's yelling at me all the time, like, you need to be taking pictures of what you're doing. You need to be videoing what you're doing. You need to be, like, going live with what you're doing. I'm kind of doing what I'm doing, so I'm not thinking about that. Like, I'll go back and write about it or talk about it later. But I feel like that's probably going to be something I've got to overcome. And it's just weird, like, when you're playing with your kids saying, all right, everyone, let's go live or let's,
for sure,
pose for some pictures or things like that. So,
see, that's what my wife's concern is about, like me starting this podcast, which is why like I don't yet do so much content like on Instagram and stuff like that. I kind of keep it honed into the podcast because my wife is worried. Like I don't want my daughter all over Instagram and all over Facebook and stuff like that. So I'm not like where you are.
You guys have to decide whether it's like a no thing or it's an okay thing. We've talked about it as a family, that exact same stuff, and they just said, yeah, we'd love it. I mean, the boys like want to start their own YouTube channel and do like magic tricks and science experiments on it. And I have no problem with that, and my wife has no problem with it. So
YouTube for kids is like putting them in a candy shop. They can just like go on and just do whatever. You're telling me I can go in front of the camera and just do whatever I want to do and then like send it out to people? This is like the best thing for kids ever. I wish I had YouTube when I was growing up.
I haven't tried YouTube Kids yet. I haven't seen it yet. And so the only thing we do on YouTube so far is music videos that we've seen, and they've gotten really into watching there's a Mickey Mouse game that they've been trying to beat. So they watch another person play the Mickey Mouse game. I forget what it's called.
But that's the big thing now, is that kids watch other kids play video games so that they can learn how to play those same video games.
Yeah. And it's working. Like, they're getting better at it.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I mean, that's what we do with golf and
For sure.
football and
Of course.
baseball. Like, we watch other people do a really good job. And my father thinks it's the stupidest thing in the world. I'm like, you've been spending like 50 years watching football. Like, you're doing the same thing. You're interested. You're watching someone else do something really well. And he's like, oh, it's not the same. I'm like, it is the same.
It is the same. And the kids are just like putting that into action. You know what I mean? Like, we're not like going out and putting on pads and going playing football. But like, I play basketball a lot. And I noticed that when NBA season is on and I'm watching every night a different NBA game, I'm going out to my basketball games every Wednesday and I'm playing so much better because like I'm just sitting there watching the game from the night before for weeks of watching, etc. So that's a very interesting concept. These kids are smarter than we are, you know?
No, yeah, I didn't come up with the fadeaway jumper. I saw Jordan do it once and I started doing it on the playground. I mean,
wait, I thought he learned it from you.
It's possible, but he's a little bit older, so I'll give him the credit.
Oh, man. Townsend, this has been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very busy. As if you were up here in New York, we would be calling you the ultimate hustler with all the different businesses and things that you have your hands in. So I don't want to keep up much more of your time. I appreciate the time that you've given me. But what I want to ask of everybody that I have on the show, and I'm going to ask you two things, is what's your favorite experience about being a father? Like, what is your favorite thing about fatherhood thus far?
Did you say my favorite saying or my favorite experience?
Favorite experience or favorite thing, whatever one, choose what you will.
I have all boys, and so honestly, everyone kind of defaults to that answer of like your kid's being born so magical and everything, and it is. But then you have all these other moments, and the good moments just keep on coming. I hesitate to even pick a spot in the past and sit there and say that was so great and just live in that past moment. We're kind of creating all these great moments all the time. So, I don't know. I just like the experience of it because kids say funny things. They do hilarious things. When you watch them learn a new skill or a talent and they get super excited about it. Like last year was Levi's first time shooting a big gun. And he shot it, but he was petrified. Like, it took him probably 3 weeks before he would even pull that trigger just because it scared him so much. And then, like, watching the light in his eyes and the excitement in his face that he overcame that challenge and can now do it, and now he gets no problem firing them. But you get little things like that all the time.
Yeah.
And, hopefully that never changes. Hopefully that's the same when they're graduating college and when they're getting married and when they're having their own kids, and you just enjoy what's happening. I was in a Bible study once, and this drove me crazy. I know we're running short on time. But the leader of the study asked, it was with a bunch of old people, like, what was the best time of your life? And so it's kind of a similar question here. And everyone was saying college, high school, this, that, like all these old times when they got married. And it kind of came to me, I'm like, right now, like, every single day is like so much fun, and like I know tomorrow is going to be like better. Maybe there's some bad days thrown in there, but for the most part, like, life is good. Are you kidding me?
I agree.
In the high school, I was living in my parents' house or at a friend's house for a while. In college, I was broke. Like, like we went out partying sometimes, but like those were not the best times of our lives. And then everyone kind of said, "Oh yeah, you're right." Like, living in America in 2019 is just it's fantastic. There's lots of opportunity. There's lots of fun. There's so much entertainment, and the kids growing up are just at least in my life, like we're not worried about stupid things. Like we're just having fun.
It's a great time. It's a great time to be raising kids. 2019 in America is the great time to be raising kids. I feel like there's never been more at our disposal. You know what I mean? Like everything is at our fingertips. It's amazing.
There's resources if you're struggling. There's support if you're struggling. And when times are good, there's so much you can capitalize on.
Absolutely.
It's enjoyable.
Absolutely. And then my last question to you, because you're a little bit further down, a lot bit further down the road than I am. One piece of advice you give me, I give me as a father. I'm a new father, 8 weeks. You're 8 years into it. So, what piece of advice you give me, and then give any other new father that's out there listening?
Yeah, make sure you have your will in place and life insurance.
Okay.
Make sure you're going to take care of your family if you die, and you're not leaving them in a lurch. And that doesn't mean you die of cancer. That means someone comes up on the sidewalk and hits you with a car while you're walking.
Right.
Make sure you have your will signed, done, notarized, and you can do a cheap one for like $20 online. It takes so much pressure off your family, off your wife, off your kids, just to have that stuff structured out and to leave them financially just not screwed. So having life insurance and having will, I think as a father, you don't want to be remembered as the guy who died accidentally, however it happens, but then left your family just completely screwed. And I'm starting to see a lot of those stories pop up where families are just getting shattered and destroyed, and dad's legacy is just completely tarnished because he left him in such a bind.
Well, with that said, I will be going online right now, and I will be doing that immediately.
Good.
But again, thank you very much, Townsend, for coming on and talking to us. It was such an insightful and great conversation. Tell everybody that's listening where they can catch your content, the podcast, the Instagram, everything. Go ahead, do your plugs before we go off.
Yeah, 100%dad.com. That's 100%dad.com. You have to spell out percent because you can't do that in a URL. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. So there's you can find us. Hopefully you can Google 100% Dad and find us as well. But 100%dad.com, that you can get everywhere from there.
Awesome. Fantastic. Townsend Russell, thank you again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you soon, I hope.
Yeah, we're going to have you on ours, I think, right?
Yes, indeed. Let's do this home and home, man. This is going to be fun.
Perfect.
All right.
All right, guys, that was the podcast with Mo Green. I hope you enjoyed it. It was on the Dad Hard Pod. We're going to have Mo on our podcast here soon. So stay tuned and look forward to that. Again, you can find us everywhere, 100%dad.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. And if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it. So send it to me.